Yeah, what are the requirements to be a healer? Somebody asked this
We'll
question.
get into that. There's actually a list. There are certain criteria which I will discuss.
Okay.
This whole preparation is about that only. There's a full session, actually, a couple of sessions on that. So I'll tell you elaborately what all is there. Yes.
Does the Ananda have to be awakened in order to attain enlightenment?
That's a good question.
Hmm.
No.
Okay.
Very paradoxically, enlightenment doesn't need anything. Enlightenment probably is the only thing in the universe which has no requisites at all. Because enlightenment is like age. Do you need any requisite for aging? Do you grow
No.
old because there's a condition you say, oh, I have to grow old?
No.
Enlightenment is that.
Okay.
Enlightenment is a beautiful happening. Doesn't depend upon anything. Of course, but on the contrary, when the Anandagandha is awakened, obviously, because it is such a powerful path, it becomes a very, very powerful instrument, path, platform for you to get to the space of enlightenment.
Okay, great. Then the other question that's related is that out of the 7 bodies that Swamiji talks about,
Mhm.
because you said basically the Ananda is not in your physical body,
Mhm.
and so it's in one of your subtle bodies.
Mhm.
So which one does it reside in?
Good question. Again, there is no space that you could say it resides inside of. If you see the 7 bodies,
Yes.
the physical body is there, the mental body is subtler than the physical body, right? This is the physical body,
Right.
tangible, touchable. Manas, mental body is little subtle but still tangible. You can feel it, you know it. Then beyond that is what? Of course, after the physical body is your breathing layer. Very tangible, right? I can actually access my breath. You put your finger, you put a thread, you just get in tangible. You can feel it. Little more subtler than that is the manas, the 3rd layer, right? 4th layer is the sukshma sarira. That's the etheric layer, probably subtler than that. And it goes more subtler and more subtler. Causal layer, probably you don't even have access to. And then, of course, the other 2 layers, you can forget about it. Anandagandha is like a merging of all of this. So it doesn't reside in any particular one layer. It's like a kind of a collapsing of all of them. You get that? But there is a specific space where you can concentrate, which you will learn
Okay.
in the process of this
Yeah, that was my
preparation.
next question. Okay,
I
very
know.
good. Thank you,
So,
thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah. Works. You're speaking about Agnya Chakra. The Agnya Chakra meditation he's already done for all of you guys, right? So initiation wise, you have had it already. It's only now your own ability to tune in with that which will work. And he gives so many techniques. The unclutching initiation itself, unclutching itself is one way. When you unclutch and when you're concentrating on your 3rd eye, you can experience it. So healer's initiation is not directly related to one chakra. It's actually opening up of everything. It's like the master of all, right? So when the Anandagandha is awakened, obviously you have access to everything else. But that said, even without this, you're already equipped with that. Because you've already had the Agnya Chakra initiation, no? You've had the meditation in the 1st day itself, no? 2nd day. Do you get that? So there's nothing more specific than this that can happen through healer's initiation. But something much more deeper will happen. Right? And this is again a very powerful path for you to access your Agnya Chakra. You can practice and actually experience the access of the 3rd eye through Anandagandha meditation. If somebody comes for healing, can you see the aura? Things like that is what you're asking. Number 1, there is no you to see anything. Because you are not doing the healing. Who's doing the healing? Only his energy does through you. There is no you. That is what, by the way, primarily happens when you become a healer. I should tell you this. You are absent. So he expresses, and through that, whatever happens, whatever happens. Do you get that? There's no you. There's no identity. There's nothing. Healing cannot happen if you are there. You have to be absent for him to be present.
Once,
Yes.
Once open through initiation, can the Anandagandha ever close?
That's a good question. We will speak about that probably in the last section of the preparation of healers initiation. I'm just not answering it directly now, Ma, because there is a section on that. So I don't want to take away time from this session for that. Just write it down. If you don't have this answered by Monday evening, ask me. But there's a section. I'll tell you what that is all about. Yes.
No more mystical question. This is a physical, practical
No,
one.
no, you see,
Yeah,
feel
no.
free to
No,
ask
no,
all
no.
questions.
No.
As I said, it's a very interactive session. If the group feels it's not engaging enough, please let us know. We are like one family. At least now we have become, yes. So we should have that flexibility with each other. Never think it is taxing for the person sitting here, because the person sitting here is Swamiji. So that energy will speak. Don't bother about this. But if you are getting disturbed by, why so many questions, anything like that, feel free to bring it up so that we can work it around. So these 2 days are exclusively for this. So please ask any kind of question. It's actually a contribution to the whole group when you ask a question, even mystical.
This is a practical one. It's about food.
It's about?
Food,
Mhm.
food, your diet.
Mhm.
A friend of mine who had taken the healer's initiation says that you have to do the Vedic diet.
We will go to that. There's a huge section on food alone. So just wait for that. It'll come probably later today. There's a huge section. We'll speak about that.
Because,
I understand.
it's a problem.
I understand. Before you get into the initiation, you will have all your questions answered, especially related to food and other habits that we have. I will speak about that. Yeah.
So how do we know that the Anandagandha or any chakra is awakened? Like what are the feelings you get physically? How do we physically know it? Other than the improved health and all, is there anything that we would be knowing? Is there any sensation which you would be feeling in those chakras or something like that?
Point number 1, you need not know.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't have any significance around knowing it. There's nothing to know there.
Okay.
It's a happening. See, how do you know that you're aging? How do you know you're growing old? Like that. This is also a natural phenomenon happening. For you, the only thing with which you can walk around is because Swamiji is doing it. He's done it. Once the initiation is done, whether or not you feel any symptoms or so-called experience, it has happened.
Okay.
Because he has done it.
Okay.
You
I
get
have
what
one
I'm
more
saying? He
question.
does it fully. So he has done it. And I will not give you a guidelines of this can happen, that can happen, because then you will be stuck. Oh, this is
Yes,
not happening.
of
You understand
course.
what I'm
Yes,
saying?
of course.
So I will always say, never get into that. It's like a
Yes.
loop which you will find very difficult. I can give you 10 things which will happen, but I choose not to give you, because there may be 1,000 things which can happen, which for me may not happen. But you will even be close to those possibilities once these 10 things are put in front of you. Like, you will feel light, or you'll this and that. Then if that is not happening, your mind will start its game. Oh, then it's not working for you. Oh, you're not such an advanced seeker. Or, oh, you're such an advanced seeker. Oh, you've become God. None of it matters at the end of it.
Okay.
Get what I'm saying? So that's why don't bother about that.
And I have one more question, which rather is like when you answered her question, her question earlier, you said everything burns down to ash. Everything there is nothing. Even Swamiji, you're being present here and all, you said that also. Actually, I was in an impression that everything else burns down into an ash, and being with Swamiji remains something above ash. And so I really got confused and scared. So can you please...
The truth is the truth. Everything
can
is
you please,
insignificant.
can you be a little more elaborate so that I can take it in, or is it like the way it is? It has to be taken in like that only.
No, I can give you an explanation, but at the end, no amount of words can actually, there's one thing which may not be able to convince you on this. It has to become an internal, for me it's an experience. That's why I can say it so effortlessly. If it may not have been an experience so far for you, it's okay, live with the question. You will see, you will get to that experience.
Okay.
But the truth still remains the same. Everything, including what the connection you have with him is going to boil down to ash only.
Oh my
The
God.
only thing that remains is the consciousness,
Okay.
which is beyond that. If you ask me directly, which is that, there is one thing beyond that, which as an experience you will discover, which is not even his frame, not even the connection, not even anything. Everything is that, literally, like really. You get that? There are many masters who said it in so many ways. what the Buddha says, what are the last words Buddha says before he actually attains, leaves the body? This is what he says, Appadipo Bhava. Appadipo Bhava is you are the light unto yourself. So he actually is chopping off the disciples' connection with him, saying, so far, even if you've said master, 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 Appadipo Bhava, turn within, turn within. He said that in Sri Ramakrishna's life. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, we've heard. Anyone who doesn't know him, raise your hand. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is an enlightened saint, avatar from India again. He had this unwavering, unshakable connection with whom? Devi, right? Kali. And the Kali is like a 2-foot stone. She's a small stone, a piece of stone which is still there. It's an idol. He used to live with that stone, right? And he was so connected with her energy. There was a point when his guru came. His guru was Totapuri. He came, a master came into his life, and he was learning from that master. And you know what? And Ramakrishna is really like, there is no word to describe intensity where he is. Like, oh my God! Like you can't imagine the things that he has done to ensure that he is always remaining in that. In connection with Kali without the trace of ego. I mean, he's an incarnation, there won't be ego is one thing. But the ways he put himself through for that. There's one story which I have goosebumps when I think of that. One of his gurus, lady guru, is talking about egoless state or something to him. And he says, he is continually putting checks on himself. Do I have ego? Do I have ego? Now this will appear gross. Like you will say, chi. You will say that, but I would like you to see it in the context of what he did. Just to see that he is one with the cosmos, there is absolutely no other judgment or interpretation for him that exists. You know what he does one day? He actually eats shit. No, really. And that too of a Dalit person, of a untouchable, they were untouchable communities. Somebody goes to the two, Ramakrishna goes and eats it. Now, this is gross, as I said, but imagine what context, what is it that you hold so much larger than the real living with the physical body? He's still in the physical body. He actually goes and eats it, licks it, just to see, am I feeling Am I feeling any kind of a thing at all? And if I am, then no. Then I am not fully there. That's the kind of practices he's done. Anyway, so this master comes, and in one of the practices, the master says, now cut the head of Kali. He actually, the story says, the sword is given to Ramakrishna's hand, cut off, chop Kali's head. He cannot take it. That's one thing he can't do. But he's made to do that. Kali herself appears and says, let go, chop it. And he chops off Devi's head. What does that mean? That means the same thing. There will come a point in the seeker's life where you will be moving away from all forms, all connections, all relations, including the gurus. But however, what is most important and significant is the guru's connection, clutching to the guru's form, is such a beautiful path for me to get to the space of no relationships. You understand? Right now, if I'm clutching to a husband form, that form, chopping one by one is a very difficult task. But when I have done all that and I have only one thing, which is the Guru himself takes me to salvation. The Guru himself or herself, that energy itself takes care of that. Do you get what I am saying? So even though it's confusing, dwell in that and you will see, you will get an answer to that.
Yeah, thank you, Ma. And there is one doubt which has been this is not related to healer's initiation, so I really wanted to know it. You raised about Agnya Chakra when he asked, and it's not even related to that. You were saying when you are unclutching, you have thoughts, you don't have thoughts, you don't even have thought that you don't have thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So the concentration, it has to be kept somewhere on any point, or if I don't concentrate on any point, it's not being stable there. Again, it is being attacked by at least a thought that I don't have thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So what should be done?
You have to discover it for yourself.
Okay.
There are 100 ways.
So
There are 10 ways at least from reaching from here to Bangalore. You stay in Bangalore, right?
yes.
For each one of us, from this place to your place where you stay, whether it's US, whether it's Australia, Bangalore, Africa, doesn't matter. There'll be at least 10 roads, 10 ways. Which road, which way is for you is what you need to discover.
So there is a different way, and each way works for different people.
Absolutely, each way works.
Each
How
way
much
works.
of you, how you connect with that, how you practice is what is all that matters.
So
So whether
ultimately-
you do a single pointed concentration on one spot, which many masters say, whether you concentrate on the breath like the Buddha says, whether you sit in a space and observe your thoughts like how Swamiji says, all paths are fingers pointing to the moon. There's no one finger which is right or wrong. All of them are pointing to the moon. Ultimately, you have to let go of the finger to get the moon.
Yes. Okay.
Because the finger is never the moon.
Yeah.
The finger is a pointer to the moon. The finger is not the moon. Eventually, you have to drop even the finger, even the path, and then you become one with the moon.
Okay.
But for that, you'll have to use the finger, some finger, you'll have to use it.
Okay.
So don't give up. That's the only thing we need to get is not to give up. One fails, move to the other. One fails, move to the other. That's why you will see Swamiji's thing is so powerful because he continuously gives new techniques. In the past 1 year, if you see, tell me how many techniques is given. Whether he says sit and visualize you're a tree getting energy, whether he says just go out today and bless all the people around you. He's told at least, I can tell you some 500 techniques in the past 1 year. Yes or no? So many things he tells now in morning satsang. Just keep smiling, he said one day. So he said go bless people, go gift people. Whatever he says is all, he's bringing in more and more and more and more fingers. So that if not one clicks. You understand? So it's a matter of discovery. You have to self-discover what it is for you. Unfortunately, there is no one manual that we can follow. And there is also both. It's such a situation, ironic situation. Done?
All these,
It's okay, Tom.
two questions.
Is everybody okay with questions like this? Huh? Or you're politely sitting inside and fuming inside, no, what is this? If that is happening, please feel free to tell. Hmm? We
Yeah,
will.
Let me know.
I'm waiting for the tea to come.
Two-part question. One is,
And we started, we started the session at 9:15. So I'm very much looking at the clock for the tea. Don't worry, we will get a break. Yes.
two-part. One is a continuation on her question.
Alec, talk loudly into the mic so that people get to hear what
Two-part
you say.
question. One is a
Great.
continuation on her question. So it doesn't matter in the technique, it matters on the intensity.
Yes.
And then second question is, you said Nandaganda is separate from enlightenment, but if you are sincere with your Nandaganda, you said there was a meditation that comes with it?
One, I did not say Anandaganta is separate from enlightenment. That word did not come from
No,
me.
not separate, but it's not necessary.
Oh, it's not necessary is what you're saying?
That's what I meant.
Yeah, nothing is necessary for enlightenment.
Okay.
Hmm. So then what's the second part?
If you are sincere and intense with your Anandaganda
Mm-hmm.
meditation,
Mm-hmm.
you said that the possibilities to express like Patanjali's siddhis would be available,
Yes.
but would it be available if you didn't get
Yes.
Anandaganda initiation?
Definitely. Everything is available anyways. But Anandagandha, once again, is like a, you have like a VIP route.
Okay.
See, there are many routes to let's say a temple or to one place. Now you can stand in the general queue for 5 years and get into and go to that place. Or a VIP route, you can directly land into that place. It's only that much, no? So this is a very powerful method that takes you closer to whatever you are seeking. It's very useful and powerful that way. But with or without it, you still have the opportunity to get to where you want to get.
So I can still get from point A to point B, but it's
Yes.
faster with a car.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Done. Probably this is the only time all of us are talking so much in the program, especially this batch. Yesterday only I said, what a calm batch, what this, what that. No, it's good. It's the only time I'm seeing so many of you actually talking and asking things. Any other questions? We'll move on. Yes, Shrikant. Atmananda parigettal nana. pattern clearing sessions are over and you're getting into a new phase is what you're asking. Pattern clearing sessions are never over. Not just in the next 10 days. Pattern clearing sessions are not over even after you get enlightened. Never think you will be without patterns. As long as you're in a physical body, pattern will exist. Just like how shadow will exist with you, just like how when I go out, my shadow is either before me or behind me, my pattern is with me. But the game of living enlightenment is to just be aware of the pattern. And then you will use the pattern and the pattern will not use you. So it's both good news and bad news. Bad news, Srikanth, for the rest of your lifetimes, patterns will be bound and will be there. But good news, Srikanth becomes the owner of the pattern. Then it doesn't matter when the pattern is there. It's just like a cloth on my body. I can remove it when I don't want it. Put it on when I want. So that's the good news. Other questions? Ma, here. ఆదిత్య ఏం చేస్తున్నావు నాన్న? మైక్ పట్టుకుని ఎక్కడి నుంచోవాలి మనం? తపస్సు చేస్తున్నావు బాబు వెనక్కి కూర్చుని? థ్యాంక్ యూ. మర్చిపోయాను, ఐ ఫర్గాట్ అబౌట్ హిమ్. థ్యాంక్ యూ. ఎస్ మా.
It's not so much a question. Maybe you can enlighten me. There's always a little bit of conflict with my religion or past spiritual practice that is still existing with me today. So it's easy if you're Indian or Hindu, but it's not so easy if you're not.
Right.
So say something.
I according to me, it's a very spicy and juicy space to be in. You are not alive if you don't have conflict. There can be current only if the wire is live. You cannot have current passing through a dead wire. Congratulations, you're alive. Conflict is a symbol of life. Live with the conflict, enjoy the conflict, appreciate the conflict, because only conflict can expand you. I personally appreciate suffering and conflict a lot, because the learning you get from a so-called conflict or a so-called episode of suffering, how much you can get from that, you will get far lesser when you are in a space of no conflict. So number one, my take on that would be that. Number two, for you, it's actually a very interesting crossroad. Especially given a conflict like a religion, as you say, is such a strong conditioning. You know, food, water, sleep, along with this are the conditions of religion and language which come very, very early in life. So if you're standing on a crossroads of such a conflict, the explosion and expansion opportunity you have is far higher than what I have. Because I don't have conflict at a religion level. You understand? I'm just taking you and me as a comparison. See, I'm born and brought up in a Brahmin community, the same communities which already this is aligned to. You understand what I'm saying? But that much more expansion is available for you with the kind of situation you are dealing with. So I would say it's a huge plus point for you.
Yeah, so actually my solution is if I get enlightened, I'll know the answer, you know. That really boils down to
That, by the way, is for everything in life, no? So that probably will make you have it quicker than me. Done? Great. Shall we move on? Few more minutes for the tea to come before you get a break. Okay. So, coming back to the main subject, which is Healer's Initiation Program. So, this is an opportunity where Anandagandha, when it is awakened, you will see healing happening as a natural thing that can happen with you. You know, naturally you will start having that healing experiences where, and if you're choosing, it's a choice. You'll know in a later session how to choose and all that. So let's not get into the details. When you choose to heal others, you will see naturally that starts happening, and you can choose to heal yourself. Either ways, you will see healing happening inside you because of this very powerful thing called Anandagandha is awakened inside me. Now, interestingly, as I was saying, many masters have healed people when they were in the body, and when they leave the body also, there are many masters who continue healing. Lot of people I know who connect with Christ consciousness have healing happening to them. Lot of people who connect to Shirdi Sai Baba, even today to Baba connect, get healed. So it's available continuously on the planet. But what is rare is directly a human being transmitting a healing science to another human in the human form that the energy is, which is Swamiji's human form, transmitting it to my human form, is not available anywhere on the planet. Everywhere else you may have gurus, you may have classes, you may have Reiki, pranic healing, Chinese healing, Tao healing. There are many, many methods, but this is the only science where directly something physically, tangibly is happening by the presence of an energy which is the cosmic energy itself. So it's a very rare and unique happening, right? Now briefly, very interestingly, how this whole thing came into place. Swamiji, as he was asking, how did Swamiji, did he have it when he was there, when he was born? It's a conscious birth, so obviously he had many dimensions already inside him. It only took that much time to express as he was growing. So he was always a healer, healing people, and going around, when he touches people get healed and all that. It was not like something special. It was just like how everybody else has 2 hands, 2 ears, 2 eyes. He had healing happening through him, naturally, right? And this many people knew, like in his hometown here, many people knew, and always they all considered him a Swami, someone, they all knew that he is a person who's come for something big, right? His horoscope itself, by the way, says that. The person who drew his horoscope, very old man, elderly man, said that this, like the Buddha's horoscope also said that this person will be a Raja Sannyasi. For Swamiji I'm saying. Means he will be a king of masters. He will lead millions to the light. And he said, I'm retiring from my profession. After drawing this horoscope, I will not touch any other horoscope. He said this. Who? Swamiji is astrologer, family astrologer. And he passed away within the 9 days of drawing the horoscope. It's like drawing the horoscope itself, he attained the ultimate, that man I'm saying. Anyway, so from birth he had all this, and it was so that, he was very famous for his healing many people. Even before the proper Life Bliss Foundation, this mission was formed, one thing he was famous for was for his healing. There were days when Swamiji would sit in small huts, he would sit on a road, he would mostly live in cemeteries, burial grounds, and people will go there for healing. They never recognized or realized he's an enlightened master and all that, but they always knew he had healing power. So everyone would generally go take his healing and all that. So it so happened that this lady, Swamiji's college principal was there. School principal or college principal, he's quite close to this lady. One day she was there with him, and they were going to a trip to Sadashiva Brahmendra. He's a great saint and enlightened master and avatar himself. He lived long, long ago, one of the masters in India who walked on this land. His name is Sadashiva Brahmendra. His Jiva Samadhi. Jiva Samadhi is what? It's a place where an enlightened master's body is the whole tomb. If you can't call it a tomb, but lack of better words I'm using that. The space is constructed around the body's master, master's body as it is. There are many live master spaces like that, which are known as Jiva Samadhis. So Nerur, there's a place here in Tamil Nadu where this master's Jiva Samadhi is there. And when you go there, you can feel the vibrations. You have a lot of Jiva Samadhis like that. Raghavendra Swami Jiva Samadhi. Many masters' Samadhis are there still. Paramahamsa Yogananda's body, by the way, is still there in the US. Intact, it's there in some place there, right? So like that, there are many masters. He's one of those masters. This master, Sadashiva Brahmendra. So Swamiji was going to have a darshan of his Samadhi. And he was going there, and this lady also was accompanying Swamiji. Now Sadashiva Brahmendra is a master who expressed like extraordinary healing, like a real healing thing which you can't imagine, like that kind of healing, just with a look, just with a touch. Everything and anything can get healed when it's around him. There's a very interesting story. This master happened to be walking one afternoon on a road, and that province, that particular area in that country was being ruled by a Mughal emperor, a Muslim king. Now this Muslim king he's such a tyrant, right? He's like a Hitler, such a dictator. He had rules. When he goes on his horse on the roads of that country, everyone should bow down to him. Like everyone should pay respect and move aside and bow down, fall at his feet and things like that. So one afternoon he was going, everyone was doing this. This master, who's the master? Sadashiva Brahmendra, was also on the same road walking with some two of his disciples. Now the master was in great samadhi, ecstasy. He was just merged in that samadhi sthiti. He did not even look at the king who was going across on the horse. Now the king notices this and the king is irritated. So the king slows down the horse so that he can get this man's attention, and the man will bow down to him. So he's making sound, he's slowing down the horse. Nothing is happening. Master is lost in his bliss and nicely walking. The king gets furious. He just takes his sword and chops off the hand. He's walking, right? He just chops off the master's hand and the hand falls down. And the master continues walking. Now the king is shocked. Like, what do you mean? The hand is bleeding, the hand is cut off, fallen on the side, and the master is still in the same state. The king it's like it's such a mad thing that's happening. What's happening here? It's like that, right? So now the disciple picks up the hand, runs behind the master and says, Master, your hand, it's chopped off. So he just looks at it and says, he takes it and does like this, and it comes back to life. It becomes normal. Now the king is really shocked. He jumps off the horse, falls at the master's feet and says, sorry, I mean, you are God. And for the rest of his life, he becomes a disciple. So this is one of the many, many stories and legends that are there in Sadashiva Brahmendra's life. He is like a healer of healers, like that kind of an energy. So Swamiji and this lady were going to his samadhi, and when this lady all along was nagging Swamiji, because she's quite close to him, she was saying, see, you know how to heal. Why won't you teach me how to heal? Tell me how I can heal. What is the use only if you are healing? How can I heal others? How can I heal myself? Every time, why will I come to you for healing? Why can't you teach me? Swamiji said, as of now, that science is not yet available to give. And she was like nagging, no, please tell, please tell. And all the way she was asking him like this. Now they go to the samadhi, and Swamiji is bowing down and paying respect to this master. And suddenly Swamiji, obviously, when he's one with that energy, right, he can actually see that energy of that master, Sadashiva Brahmendra there. This lady is still saying, teach me how to heal, teach me how to heal. She's like nagging him. And Swamiji can see this person, right? He has the vision, darshan of that master. And Swamiji is telling that master, see how she's nagging me. She's telling me to teach her how to heal. What do I do? You only tell me. Now imagine the scene. This lady is looking at Swamiji, and Swamiji is talking to that master. This lady can't see that master. It's like empty space there. You've seen in the movies, like empty space where people disappear and still, you have objects coming out. We have seen at least one movie. So many movies are there like that, right? And as Swamiji is talking, there is a dhruva grass over there, a blade of grass. When Swamiji is having darshan of this master, the master actually hands over this grass blade to Swamiji. Now this lady is seeing a grass coming out of nowhere into Swamiji's hands, like that. But Swamiji has darshan of this master. Are you getting the whole scene? And he receives the grass. Now as the grass is being passed to Swamiji's hand, the whole science of having the healer power available, the healer's initiation available, is just downloaded into Swamiji's system. And then Swamiji looks at her and gives a small piece of that grass and says, now you can heal others. And her Ananda Gandha is awakened. She is the first healer that Nityananda Dhyanapeetham has produced. We have over 5,000 healers now across the world. And the count is increasing with every program like this. Right? So she became the first healer, and it went on. Obviously from there, Swamiji, went ahead and started initiating everyone else also. And it is, there are many, many stories actually around healing, and of course Swamiji is healing, many, many, many stories. But most remarkable stories are, when he was in Erode, he was in one place in Tamil Nadu where he used to heal like this. There was one family, one Dhanashekaran who was there. He is called as Ayya. Now we call him as Ayya, the first disciple couple who had come to Swamiji. This Dhanashekaran was suffering from cancer. 4th stage, pancreas, liver, all the stomach gone. Cancer, and doctors said it's days before he passes off. It's been months that he did not eat food, and he was like literally, in terminal illness kind of a thing. So it so happened that somebody recommended that he comes and visits this young man. Swamiji was all of 22 years old, shaven head, like a small school kid he used to be at that time. They said there's a young man who can heal and he's a master and all that. That man, this Dhanashekaran, this guy, this patient did not believe in any of this. He said, what nonsense you're talking, Swamis, Babas in this age, 21st century we are living and you're talking all this, forget it. But somehow the family, the wife had hope that some way, someone will heal him. And they somehow pushed him into the car by force and they brought him. Now the hut is somewhere. Swamiji used to stay on the river, on a river bank in a hut. There wasn't even a proper path for a car to go. Somehow, it was quite rugged. So they said it's a risk taking him. So they went and asked Swamiji to come and look at this patient. So Swamiji comes and walks up to the car, opens the door, and this man, this much frame, because of the disease his shoulder, is lying in the back of the car. And Swamiji goes and puts his hand, and this man opens his eyes to see a young boy. Small boy with bald head, and he's wondering, who is this small kid and what is he going to do to heal me? He's already in a doubt. Obviously, you see him, you won't even relate that, oh, this incarnation and all that, right? So he does that, and he said, and Swamiji just said, you are healed, and he walks away. Now it so happens that after a few hours, the car is back to the hut. Now the car is standing in front of the hut. This guy, this patient walks out of the car, walks into the hut, and asks Swamiji, what did you do to me? And Swamiji is looking up. I healed you. I am feeling hungry after so many years. What did you do to me? He is shocked. This is like immediate, okay? And Swamiji is saying, I healed you. What do I do now? I'm hungry. Swamiji said, eat. What do you mean eat? I can't eat. I'm on liquid diet. I have this, I have that. He's like a 4th stage cancer patient. Swamiji said, just eat. And he is not able to believe. So Swamiji said, okay, you sit here. I will get food for you. And obviously Swamiji doesn't have a personal kitchen and all. It's a small 6 by 6 feet hut, right? So he gets food from a dhaba. Dhabas are, by the way, roadside eateries in India. Every half a mile you have dhabas. You have just a stall. Somewhat, don't ask what water they use. Don't ask what they use. They cook it. It's very tasty, by the way. I should tell you that. Anyway. So he brings food from a dhaba, not like, a sanitized, sterile water, this, that, nothing. On roadside tap water and God knows what else they mix. This, everything they mix. That's how they make it. In Tamil Nadu, every time you're sweating. So obviously, I think that adds to the taste of the dish. So all that goes into all the human secretions, everything into the food, and the food comes. And is served in front of Dhanashekaran, this guy. And he says, what do you mean? Swami said, just eat. Nothing will happen. You are healed. And it's quite spicy food, right? They make all nice spiced up food you get. In all parts of South India, it's like spicy food only you will get. And this man, who's like a 4th stage terminally ill cancer patient, not eaten for God knows how many months, sits and has a spicy dhaba food from a Tamil Nadu roadside. And nothing happens to him. And this is like, I think probably 10 years back, he still continues eating fully fine even till date. So that was the miraculous, biggest thing that many things have happened, but on record which has come, one of the things is this. So they go back home, they keep coming again and again, now they're connected, the disease also has gone, and Amma, Dhanashekaran's wife, Jamunamma, is really deeply connected with Swamiji. And it starts happening, the bond is developed, and one night she just gets up at 1 o'clock and says, I have to go. Swami did not have food for 3 days. Now they're quite a little far off from where Swamiji stays. And this Dhanashekaran says, you're mad or what? 1 o'clock in the night you're saying I have to go. Some dream you got. Morning we'll go. Sleep for now. She says, no, I have to go. She gets up, gets ready, just cooks, and they both go. Middle of the night, midnight, they just reach Swamiji. He literally pounces on the food and says, I have not had food for 3 days. I am hungry. Then she says, they finish, and this Dhanashekaran gets up. Okay, come, let's go home. She says, which home? I am in home. You can go wherever you want. I'm not coming. Now this is a bigger shock for him. He says, what do you mean? I mean what I'm saying. I'm not coming. This is my home from now. And she just comes and stays back. Then he tries to convince her, cajole her, come home, we have 2 children, this, that, all that. He tells Swamiji, please tell her. Why is she not listening? Swami says, it's individual choice and decision. Nothing can be done. If she's ready to come, you take her and go. Even now when our parents, our husbands, all ashramites come and ask, they come, no? Family members come and individually see. Everyone has their own connection with God, right? In Sarvadarshan, he'll get big letters. Please send my daughter. Please do that. Please. He'll only say one thing. If they want to come any day, I don't even have a gate, he will say. So many places in the ashram, there's no gate. You can just jump off the compound wall and go anywhere you want. I don't have security. I don't have gate. Please take and go. but who's ready to go? Once they come in, going is not an option, because that's the beautiful life he gives us. Anyway, so Swami says it's her individual choice. Then Dhanashekaran says, okay, I will go then. And back in 2 hours, he comes back with his suitcase and her suitcase. He also stays back. So they became the first official initiated disciples of Swamiji. They lived with Swamiji in that small hut for one year, over 1 year. Just the 3 of them, without anything, just a mud hut and a thatched roof. 3 of them sleeping together, eating together, drinking together, bathing together, everything together. Like 3 of them like this in a small room. As small as the bathroom here, like that. Anyway, fortunate people, they just got the master in a complete different dimension of the master they got. So he initiated them as healers. This whole story happened, right, of the samadhi going and all that. And then later there were a lot of incidents which led for, I will not get into all of that. We'll take another week to complete the course if I get into each story. But a lot of things happened, and eventually Swamiji happened, the Biddi ashram happened, where the owners had visions and they searched for Swamiji, came and they gave, donated the land. And in the Biddi ashram, when they got the land, it's like a huge property, like 40-50 acres of property, but completely barren. Only stones and rocks, and it was a snake farm. Thousands of snakes were there on that land before we made it an ashram. It's like a proper forest, it's on the range of a forest, and it's a snake farm. You can't do anything with that land actually. You can't go and live there. And Swamiji was so very excited, joyous, and these guys, others, 3-4 people around him used to wonder, what is he so excited about? What did we get? There's nothing, there's not a drop of water on this land. You can't live here. What will we do with this land? Useless thing they have dumped on our head. And Swamiji would say, international ashram, in 6 months it will become an international ashram. And they're wondering, yeah, right, from where, which angle is this an international ashram? Is what people around him thought. But really in 6 months, the first international ashramites came and settled down. That's a different story. So, but what happened is, in this whole thing, they were, making up the land to make it livable. And there was one patch of dry bamboo, dry leaves, dead trees. They wanted to chop off that whole space. Anyways, they're gone, like withered, dried, dead. Swami said, no, this is the Siddhavana of Dhyanapeetham. This is the herbal garden. You have no idea. Billions will get cured only because of this soil. Now again, they're looking up at him. What all you talk? We don't understand what you're saying. Half of the time, they will not understand what he's saying. He will say, see, look, my Sabha. And nothing will be there. Just big, big stones. So where is he talking about Sabha? What is he talking? You just can't get it, right? But they just kept nodding their head. And of course, everything, as he said, has always happened. So anyway, this is the Siddhavana. They said, what do you mean? This is dry, dead leaves and trees, right? Then he took this grass. Then they took this dried, this grass which that master gave. Swami took that grass, put it on that spot, and he did something, and you will not believe. Within few days, it became green. Green, and that is still my best favorite spot in the ashram. Behind Tapovan office, I'm saying. Of course, outsiders don't have access to that place. That is still the most beautiful spot in the ashram, after the banyan tree, of course, and after a few other spots, but one of the best spots. It's such a green, you will just feel energy exploding when you just stand there. So from there, by the way, we get the sticks. You will, if you're getting initiated to heal others, you receive a healer's initiation, a stick you will receive. So the bamboo tree, from that bamboo tree, he makes the Swamiji instructs us to make the sticks, and he energizes and gives it to you during healer's initiation. It's from that place. And of course, within 6 months, the entire ashram became green. It's interesting how water came into the ashram. The boring specialist, the borewell specialist, checked the whole ashram and said, your ashram does not have water. It is a barren land. You can never get water for even if you try for the next 20 years. Swamiji just took his walking stick one day and just wherever he tapped, he said, dig here, dig here, dig here. Everywhere water came. Everywhere. And Swamiji says, I spoke to Varuna directly. Who is all these fellows? They don't know anything. Varuna is, by the way, one of the energies, right? Is the energy of water. Everywhere he tapped the stick and said, here, surprising, he'll just dig it and water will gush. Today, if you see the Biddi ashram, every quarter mile we have water. You cannot believe it's the same land where experts so-called said, Next 20 years, you won't have water in this land. We have no dearth of water everywhere. We have water today. And that is what happens when you're living around an avatar. There is nothing called scarcity at all. There is only abundance. But he puts you into situations of survival and scarcity so that you break out your patterns and you start experiencing abundance as you, as a natural you. You know, the power of your consciousness. In order that you get there, only he puts you to situations. Really, it's a very different situation we live in, I tell you. As ashramites, we know what it is. There are days when you don't have, like, you won't have anything around you, like no basic amenity. And yet you will see the beautiful flow of life happening. You're so alive. You're so vibrant. You're so much full of life. You're so much in romance with life. I tell you, only he can do this. He is capable of putting you in a big throne and having the experience of actually being with nothing. He is capable of putting you on a roadside, some beggar spot, and having you experience that you are a big king sitting in a throne. Both can be done because it is him. So I tell you, the best way is really putting your life in the hands of the master, in his hands. Then you will see the ultimate happening to you every minute, every moment. Ultimate is happening for us. You know, both extremes. Intense fear, insecurity on one hand, intense creativity and abundance in one hand. Beautifully they go hand in hand. Anyway, so that's a little bit about the whole initiation process that happens. You know, how the science of initiation happened as a beautiful incident in Swamiji's life, and now today millions and millions of people actually just get it through, you know, one initiation from him, right? So that's how the whole thing happened. So with that, we'll take a break. Look up, everyone, please listen. Anyone who does not want to be a healer, please raise your hand. There are two categories, either healing yourself or healing others. If you do not want to be initiated into both, raise your hand. If you do not want to be initiated, No, we can, without that also. You don't want to go for healer's initiation? That's what you're saying. You're already a healer, you're not a healer. But not? Sorry, not? Have you been initiated by Swamiji? You're some other healer, right? Yeah, so then you will not be filling this form, because this is basically if you are taking on healing either yourself or healing others. There are two categories of healing. Healing yourself is one, healing others is one. So if that is the case, only then. So you do not want to even go for healing yourself. That's what you're saying? Yeah, you can take that. So I'm speaking about anyone who's not at all wanting to be a healer. Yes, absolutely. Oh yes. I'll go over everything. Please don't bring up doubts from the document. I will speak about that in detail now. This session is about that. So don't ask questions from the document. If it is not answered, then ask me. If you have any question you think, if it is from the document, we'll talk about it anyways. If not, please ask.
I'm already a healer, and I do with people, with countries, places, all sorts of things. What benefit would I get by doing this?
See, one thing, Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer Service complements all other practices that you take. Anything you can practice along with Nitya Spiritual Healing Service. That's the first thing I would like to say. It doesn't, adversely affect any other process that you're doing. So you can do that and you can do this. That's the first thing. Second thing, the biggest thing that you will have is you will have Swamiji's energy continuously flowing in you once you take the healer's initiation. Whether you heal others or not, still, once the Anandagandha chakra is activated, it is like a spiritual umbilical cord connection between him and you. It's like the bridge is established, officially, spiritually, you will be linked with him all the time. Whether you, pray to him or not, whether you think of him or not, whether you come back and listen to him or not, like to his satsangs or any of that, this connection will not be lost. Unless, of course, if you abuse him. That's a different thing. We'll speak about that a little later. It's that. So I don't know if you can call that as a benefit, but I know that's a space which you cannot get in any other form. Yeah. A space of dwelling, he dwelling inside you.
Okay. Because when I do any work, I always surrender to the divine anyway, so.
Yeah, it's absolutely optional. Obviously, this is another expression of the same divine energy.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
when it is so good, why not have more of it?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, shall we begin the form? Okay. So let's go over the, please look at the loose sheet, Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer Guidelines. Is everybody reading that? Spiritual Healing Prayer Guidelines, that sheet. Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer is to be referred only as such at all times and not by any other terms. Means the name of this healing process is, we need to call it as Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer Service, Healing Prayer. Understand and acknowledge that the practice of Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer is a religious and spiritual prayer and a meditation service only. It does not involve the diagnosis or treatment of any medical or psychological condition and does not involve the use of any physical intervention or manipulation of the human body. Any benefit that an individual experiences comes from within him or herself based on his or her body's ability to heal on its own. So basically this is more like a disclaimer saying that you are not going to replace your healing service with some process, like it's not like an operation, right? It's not like a surgery. You cannot sit and prescribe medicines to the person just because you happen to be a healer. This healing service is strictly like a prayer. Do we understand? It is not compensating for any medical system or any other kind of medical process for the person who comes to you for healing. Unless of course you're a doctor. If you're a doctor, then as a doctor you can go ahead and give the medicines, do the prescription as per your role as a doctor. But as a spiritual healer, Nitya Spiritual Healer, all you will be doing is more like a prayer. That we need to understand. It's not a substitute for anything else. Like it doesn't replace medication. You do not hold the right to tell people you can stop medicines now, reduce the dosage now. None of that you will be doing. That's what it wants to clarify. Clear? Next one. So do not make any guarantees, warranties, representations regarding the outcome of Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer process, and specifically do not claim that the process is in any way diagnoses, treats, heals, cures or prevents any disease, illness, injury or physical or mental condition. So we cannot promise it. We cannot guarantee, oh, you will definitely be healed, you will definitely be cured. We can't do that because all that is a legal binding, right? This is like a prayer. It works, I know that. Definitely it will work and you will see that. People will acknowledge it starts working. People will experience the healing happening. But you will not claim either verbally or in a written statement or in any form that and give a guarantee of that this will work. You will be cured and things like that. Is this clear? See, most of this whole form is done by our lawyers in the US. Now in the US, which is a land of like some 10 million laws, where if I sit, there's a law, if I stand, there is a law. And if my neighbor's dog barks and my grandmother in her house dies, I can link both and sue the neighbor for the dog barking. So for such kind of things, you have 10,000 laws. That is the reason you will see many stringent things on this paper. But most of it does not actually apply on principle. We are doing, as I said, it's a legal requirement, so we are following this. Doesn't mean it applies in many countries. So many things don't apply actually. You understand? But one thing, please don't guarantee, and because that gives a room for people to come back and hold you responsible, accountable. They can actually sue you, so please don't use that. The verbiage we use is to be very careful, always refer that this is a prayer service. Do we get this? Because it's mystical, we cannot guarantee it, but we know it works. That's a different thing altogether. Next point. Do not engage in recommending any changes in current medical services being used by people who come to ask for healing, that is, by others to whom you may provide Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer services. Do not use the word patient to describe someone who elects to receive your Nitya Spiritual Healing Prayer service. So if somebody is asking you to heal them, you will not call them as patient, you will call them as participant. Clear? People who come are participants for you. They are not referred or called as patients. Is this clear? Because you are not a doctor. You are a spiritual healing prayer. You are doing a spiritual healing prayer service. You are just extending a service. So you will call them as participants. And it has to be chosen by the person who wants to heal. I cannot go and force healing on anyone. The person should be willing to receive healing from me in order for me to heal them. Is this clear? And this is, by the way, as I said, there are two categories in healing. One category is where you choose to heal yourself. Then there is no question of any of this to arise. There is no other person you will be healing. Second category is category, all of you must please listen to this. This is very important and will help you choose your participation in this program. So please do not sleep in this class. Earlier session, many of you dozed off. I didn't wake up because that's a story session, that's still fine. But this is actuals. So let's please listen up to this. Please don't sleep. You just came back from a break. If you're feeling sleepy, wash your face and come. But please sit straight and listen up, please. So, where was I? So yeah. So people have to come and they should be ready to receive healing from you. You cannot go force healing on anyone. There should be a request for healing. Either a person should request healing, himself or herself, or if they are in a condition where they cannot do it. Somebody is terminally ill, somebody is in coma. Obviously, they can't get up and tell you, heal me. You should have the consent of family members for them to receive healing from you. Do we understand this? So that's one of the things. So do not go and force healing on anyone. If they choose to and they ask you, that's when you will heal. Then, if you're a licensed physician or other licensed healthcare practitioner, this is, by the way, only for 1 or 2 people in this room. Most of us are not, right? This is for doctors and people who have a doctor degree who are in the medical field. This point is for them. Advise anyone to whom you are providing Nitya spiritual healing prayer services that such services do not constitute diagnosis, care or treatment or the practice of medicine or any other healthcare profession. Further, do not engage or claim to engage in medical diagnosis, care or treatment or in the practice of medicine or any other healthcare profession in conjunction with any of your activities as a Nitya spiritual healing prayer practitioner. So for the doctors in the room, this means that you cannot club your profession with healing. Healing has to be done separately as a prayer. Your profession has to be kept separate to healing. Do we understand? You cannot mix both. While healing, you cannot do diagnosis and speak like a doctor. While healing, you will have to remain as nothing and allow Swamiji's energy to heal the person. And when you are a doctor, you can behave like one and give your professional advice to the person who comes to you. This is only for the doctors in the room. So for most of us, this doesn't apply. Then, collect and maintain a file. This point also, this whole point is for countries where there are such regulations that you need to take a consent form before you touch a person. There are some countries in the world where I cannot touch people. To touch a person, I need a consent form. I need to take their consent. That is where this says collect a file, signed and maintain a file and all. In almost 99% countries, this does not apply. So in a country like most of the country, in India at least, it's like that. So there's no question of taking permission for touching someone. But there are some countries, especially in the Arab and UAE, where there are a lot of restrictions around touching people. In those countries, this clause applies. Is this clear? And I think none of us fall under this realm. So I'll be moving from that point. I won't go to that point because most of us it doesn't apply. And how do you know if it applies to your country? You just need to approach a nearest center. If you are in the United States, just ask the Los Angeles Ashram. They will tell you, depending on which place you are in, what rule may apply legally. This definitely doesn't apply to a lot of countries. Then next point, understand and acknowledge that your participation in Nitya spiritual healing prayer program is on a voluntary basis. So you should understand that whenever you're healing as a volunteer. Do you get that? Not as a professional. You're not doing it as a career. You're doing it as a service. All this obviously is if you're healing, choosing to heal others. If you're healing yourself, this doesn't apply. So do not charge or accept any fees for Nitya spiritual healing prayer service you provide to others. So if you choose to heal others, you cannot collect fees for that. Do you get this? It has to be done free. It's a service you're doing. So you cannot charge, you cannot run a business by healing. Okay? Yeah, we'll get into a session. We have one session for the do's and don'ts of a healer. I'll speak more on that then. Next, Nitya spiritual healing service is always offered only by the individual offering the Nitya spiritual healing prayer service, not by Dhyanapeetham or any of its associated organizations. This again is a legal clause. So if legally Dhyanapeetham, nobody can implicate and sue us and because of this come back to us and say you all did this, you all did that kind of a thing. So you should understand as an individual you are representing that energy and you're transmitting it during this service to a person who comes to you for healing. Next point, understand and acknowledge that you as an individual practitioner, you are responsible for any Nitya spiritual healing prayer services you provide. Dhyanapeetham or its associated organizations and Swamiji are not responsible or liable for any consequences, claims or damages, direct or indirect, arising from the Nitya spiritual healing prayer services that you provide to other individuals. This is also like a legal point just to put it on the legal front, that the organization is not associated with any outcomes that may happen because of you healing others. By the way, nothing damaging can happen when you're healing. It is Swamiji only that heals. So it's not that something damaging will happen. It is that, as I said, the US lawyers have framed this, so they've taken care, all points are inserted carefully. It's only as a precaution mode that this has been put there. And then do not provide Nitya spiritual healing prayer services. This, by the way, strictly doesn't apply to any of us in this room. This again is for some countries where there are rules and laws by the country that people who are suffering with disease cannot touch others and things like that. I know none of the people in this room this clause will apply. So do not worry. Even if you are a patient, you can still do it. Here, this is basically saying you will not provide the healing service if you are going through any physical, mental, psychological condition or disorder. As I said, this is for countries where even touching is forbidden. And I know none of us belong to those countries. So this is also only from a legal standpoint, doesn't apply for most of us, doesn't apply for our country laws. Okay? Next point, if you become aware that an individual who has requested your Nitya spiritual healing prayer services appears to suffer from a mental disorder, do not provide Nitya spiritual prayer services and recommend that he or she seek attention from an appropriate licensed healthcare practitioner or mental healthcare provider. This, by the way, is basically for certain conditions where even touching the person is a risk. You will have to apply something called CS. What is CS? Common sense. You should always ml common sense liquid, the syrup with you. Always use common sense. If a person is hysteric like a kind of a psychological disorder where they're ready to kill someone, don't go with your healing compassionate hand, put the hand on them and get killed. That's all this means. If you know that they are suffering from conditions which can be a risk, first always send them to emergency care. They have to be referred to a healthcare practitioner first, obviously, makes sense, and only then will you do the prayer. If you see an accident, somebody is fallen on the road, head broken, don't sit and heal them on the road. What will you do instead? Please rush them to an emergency care unit first. Get them the first aid first, and then if they are alive, you can do the healing. But instead, if they are bleeding from the head and you're sitting and healing, you will be a direct doorway to their death because you have delayed the care to be reaching them. Do you understand this? So such things, situational basis things, you will have to take a call depending on the situation. Remember, you are only doing a prayer. It is not a medical diagnosis or a treatment or a surgery. Many a times it's, by the way, more effective than that. But that said, we'll have to use common sense depending on various situations. Clear? That's what this point says. Then, Dhyanapitam reserves the right to make amendments or changes to the Nitya spiritual healing prayer guidelines from time to time. The practitioners shall adhere and follow all guidelines and procedures set forth and amended from time to time, including any request to stop serving as Nitya spiritual healing prayer practitioner in the future. It is the practitioner's responsibility to update himself or herself in any changes to the guidelines and processes. This is also to tell you that basically any changes can be made to this whole process, and of course we will let you know. Though it says it's your responsibility, we'll reach out if there is any updates, either on the website or we'll email you. Somehow we'll let you know. Usually there are never any changes because there's no question of change. It's Swamiji's energy working through you. As I said, it's a standard legal document. That's why it has so many points to it. So this is the gist of the whole guidelines. This paper is for you. The loose sheet is for you. You can keep it with you. Any questions on this? Any questions on this? Okay. We'll move to the next part. Now please take out your pen. All of you are on this page which says Healers Initiation Program. Yes, you have a question. Wait for the mic. It's coming.
If you're doing some form of natural medicine and without telling them, could you practice by radiating Swamiji's energy? Like keep it to myself, not say anything?
No, I understand what you're saying. Obviously, when you are in Swamiji's remembrance, you're automatically falling in tune with Swamiji's energy, right? That will happen, and that's bound to happen naturally as a natural part of you that will get radiated. That's one thing. But specifically, do not get any purpose or context called healing where you are unless you've not taken permission from the other person.
Yeah, like I wouldn't tell them I'm performing the prayer
No.
But it's
If
just, it's always flowing through me.
if it's always flowing, then obviously there's nothing to tell, right? That's not, there is no intention you have.
Yeah.
It's happening as if you're breathing.
Yeah.
So that doesn't need anything.
Okay.